Want to support the Shuffle Squad? Be sure to check out all of our sponsors in the description to pick up Pokemon TCG singles, sealed, and PTCG live codes.
How's it going, everyone? It's PJ here from the Shuffle Squad, and we're joining you again for another meta discussion. We're going to be talking about Gdansk Regional coming up, but this information is important to you if you're going to be playing Cups and Challenges coming up this weekend or maybe even next weekend. We've got a whole bunch of time before Surging Sparks is actually legal, so lots of things and lots of changes to talk about in the meta, and obviously there's been a lot of online differences in tournament results here for sure, as well as we're looking at some European regionals too. So I brought on a whole slew of guests, as I do always here, and we're going to go through them. Our first guest here is the one, the only Little Dark Fury. How's it going, LDF? How you been?
Sup. Thanks for having me on again for another one of these meta discussions. Yeah, I've just been chilling, just making content, getting ready for Surging Sparks releasing in like a week or two. So been enjoying that, and yeah, just happy to be on again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm really excited. I've been playing with a lot of the cards, so it looks like a lot of cool new decks are coming out. Very excited for that. But there's lots to discuss about this current meta, and we'll get there. And who better to talk about that than somebody that's had an awesome run with the same deck over and over?
Yeah.
And we're going to talk to you. Rahul is joining us here. Rahul, how are you?
Good. Thanks for having me. Great to be here. Should be a fun one.
Yeah. I've been piloting Lugia for forever and a day.
Yeah, I'm all one trick now.
Are you sick of Lugia yet, or are you still just flying high?
I'm still flying high. I think we got. I'll probably have to switch it up for Surging Sparks at the very least, but
Fair.
I've got 2 more tournaments in this format for myself,
Perfect.
so I might as well just send it again.
Love it. All right, and then we have rocking some brand new TSS attire. We've got Ian Robb. How's it going, Ian? How are you?
What's up, guys? Doing pretty good. This format, I've been playing a lot of, different stuff, so really excited to talk about one of the final events of the format. And it feels like it's been, we haven't had a rotation forever.
Yeah.
We've seen a new set.
Are we in Silver Tempest format? What's going on?
I don't even know. Feels like it. Feels like it's
I know China is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah. With them having some bands, some interesting bands too, what I saw, which is kind of wild. They banned like all of Lost Zone Box.
The only other good deck besides Lugia.
Exactly. So might as well play Lugia, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Or Reggie's.
Yeah.
Reggie,
Speaking to a lot of heartstrings here on this metaphorcast, talking about some of the best decks. But we're going to talk about the best decks for Gdansk Regionals. There's lots to come out and lots to talk about with some changes to old favorites, that's for sure. So the first thing I want to kind of cover, and this has kind of been, I'd say, recent on my X feed or Twitter feed, is that Dragapult is putting in Iron Thorns in the list, which is kind of wild. I've seen a couple of these lists pop up. I've seen a couple of streamers talk about this. So that's going to be one of the first things that we're going to talk about here. So we'll start things off. LDF, have you seen this deck? Do you know about it? Is it a real threat? Is it a fake deck? What's going on?
Yeah. So I saw this deck from like Japan on Twitter, and I tried it out, did a video on it because I thought it was cool. It's an interesting concept. I don't know if it's better than like the normal Dragapult build with just like Pidgeot or just Dusknoir, Dusclops, and like Tatsugiri. The Thorns is a cool concept. It's cute, but I don't know. It's kind of like if you're playing like a Klefki in a deck or something, you're just trying to like stick something in the active for a turn to like slow your opponent down, which I get is like decent because Dragapult can sometimes be a little bit slower, but I feel like when you already have like Crystal and Crispin in the format, it's not really that necessary. I don't know, it's cool, but it feels like more just like one of those like random decks from Japan that I don't think is going to translate very well over here.
Yeah, I can see the theory. I can see somebody in the kitchen just cooking this thing up. But the only real thing that I can see working in this deck is that it plays like 4 Crispin or something crazy like that to get energy acceleration out there. But the big elephant in the room, I guess, is that, Dragapult had such a great success for that short time. We were excited about Dragapult with Sparkling Crystal. Rahul, can you tell me if Dragapult is still a real deck? We didn't see it really have any major results, I guess, so far.
It's still not bad, I don't think, because it did definitely get second in Lille, which is the last European regional.
Right.
And I think one important thing to note is, like, I think most places kind of stick to their like comfort deck. So I think like a lot of
Sure.
the players who played what they played over in France will play pretty similar stuff here in Poland,
Yeah.
which doesn't bode well for Dragapult because there was a lot of Drago. And Drago kind of just eats up Dragapult, especially because all these Dragapult lists aren't playing Manaphy, which is crazy, but at the same time, it's like it feels like you don't really have the slot to do so.
Right. The lists are so tight with Dragapult, and I think that that's like the real issue at hand is that Manaphy is necessary for a lot of different decks now. And I think that having, 70 HP is pretty good for a Dreepy, but decks like Regidrago can incorporate Halucha and just fix the math. And now you're really trying to fight a losing battle for those opening turns. That's for sure. Now, Ian, I want to talk to you a little bit more about some of the text that I've seen go in here. We see that Dragapult does have the ability to change its engine. Obviously, we've got the Dust Noir, which people want banned here, as one of the better engines, I feel. You can change your opinion if you want, but do you think that Pidgeot might come back in Dragapult to make it a viable deck or a winning deck again? Because I've seen some online results that show that.
I don't really think Pidgeot EX is a good card right now in decks like that. I think the only real thing about support is like I really like Dust Snore because it fixes your numbers against the higher HP decks, or I guess technically stage 1 the V-Star decks, so like Drago allows you to fix numbers when otherwise it's really tough for you just because your numbers are 260, which is like those numbers are good, but they're just awkward to set up when you need to like put on so much pressure in the current game. Yeah. So I think that playing is just very similar to what won the first event of this format is the best way to go. Cards like Klefki is really the only way you can update your deck, and I'm really surprised. Not even just Drago, but overall, Klefki is not being played enough when it is the only real way to consistently win going second in a format where every deck is so powerful and does what it wants almost every single game. Playing cards like Klefki is, like I just said, the only real way to counter these things, and I think that that's an evolution needed in the format if people really want to win, because it's the only way to win tournaments, in my opinion, of decks like Dragapult is you have to win your coin flip like 80% of the time against all these like fast aggressive decks like Palkia or Drago. So I think you have to play Klefki.
Yeah, I even went as far to cook up in my mind, do we bring back the Art Keys deck? Which I think somebody used to call it Boo Boo Keys, which was really just a wild name, but it had Aerodactyl, which I do think that Aerodactyl V-Star could be kind of funny, but that seems like in the rogue and meme territory, kind of similar to how we see Iron Thorns splashed into Dragapult. So obviously, I want to talk to you a little bit more, Ian, about the better of the two Dragapult decks, it seems, and obviously regional winning deck. We saw James Cox win
take on this
with Regidrago V-Star. So give me your thoughts on Regidrago V-Star right now after it just won.
I am amazed it won a regional in this format, to be flat out honest. I have no clue how, and when I saw the results of Lil, I thought it was a fake event, and like I was being tricked or something. This current format, when I really love Regidrago as a deck, but when Raging Bolt is the most played deck, there's absolutely zero reason you should be as a competitive player when you're allowed to play every single deck and playing Regidrago, in my opinion. Imagine you win by like 40% of the time, and there's just so much luck in it. I just don't really feel comfortable playing a deck where all my strengths are, this don't matter when I'm going to have to face like 3-4 Raging Bolts if I want to win an event. So I feel right now that Regidrago just won, I think is in the worst spots it's been in since Worlds. So it's not a deck I really recommend. I do think it's better than Dragapult, but again, when the game is just so fast, why would you want to be playing for a deck that's guaranteed to be slow and you're playing with 2 prized Pokemon the entire time? That's just not really a recipe for success right now. So I would not recommend Regidrago, which is something that I'm not about saying.
That's definitely fair. I mean, I know that I sleeved up Regidrago again after Louisville Regionals. I had a real hard time that day with getting my deck to work. And then I played it against Zach here on some tabletop videos on the Shuffle Squad channel. And it still did the same thing where we did not see it do the thing, did Regidrago things. Now, Rahul, I want to talk to you a little bit because you've got some friends and some testing partners that have been playing Regidrago. So give me your personal insight on Regidrago as a deck. Would you recommend it to somebody playing in not only this regionals coming up in Poland, but maybe some cups and challenges? Do you think it's cup ready still or challenge ready still?
I agree with Ian's like take on it, where I think you need to win the flip to play a lot of the games in this format, especially with Drago. But I think the added layer of complexity to the deck is that you aren't really allowed to make mistakes.
Right.
Like other decks like Raging Bolt or Lugia or Palkia, even, you're allowed to make mistakes and you can come back because your deck is so inherently powerful. But Regidrago, it's like if you use your V-Star at the wrong time, you sequence at the wrong moment, all of a sudden you have no comeback potential. Your whole deck is like functioning around this V-Star, the threat of this V-Star ability. So I personally wouldn't play it. But like I think the reason most of my group ends up does playing it is because it wins a lot in testing. Like the deck is still very powerful, and as a good player with cards like Noctowl, you feel like you have some agency. Compared to like Bolt, where you're just slamming Sadas, you're slamming whatever cards are in your hand at the time. It's like Lugia, you're just slamming Ultra Ball, you're going next, kind of thing. It gives you like the most semblance of, I guess, skill expression other than like another straight Noctowl deck. But at the same time, it's like you're adding another layer of inconsistency and another complexity to it that I don't think new players, especially if you haven't played Drago, should pick up. I think you should just put your time into something else for the remainder of this format.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And I mean, Noctowl's been there for me sometimes, maybe in 20% of my games, but the other 80%, where is Noctowl? Maybe it's in my prizes. Does it do anything? I don't know. But yeah, I mean, as far as that goes, I did want to talk to LDF about something that I saw, obviously both other people here talking about, which was Raging Bolt. Raging Bolt is that big Unga Bunga deck that seems to keep doing well. It's a good deck. You have a good deck. What are your thoughts, LDF, on Raging Bolt right now? We saw the charms incorporated. We saw it win Louisville. It was a really innovative build, I guess. As much as you can innovate Raging Bolt. And then we're seeing Sandy Shocks being taken out. So are you playing it with the I forget, it's Iron, it's not Iron Moth, what is it? Slitherwing, that's the one.
The ghost.
Slitherwing. Are we putting Slitherwing in? Are we buffing up our charms? What's going on?
Yeah, I think Caleb's list is really solid. Raging Bolt, surprisingly, like it's not super complex compared to like other decks in the format, but it does actually have some cool things it can do. I know like the quad Bravery Charm build that we saw like Xander Pro play also is really cool, because like just putting Bravery Charms on your bolts and keeping your board very limited at like the start of the match can actually be difficult for some decks to handle. Raging Bolt is a very like go fast type deck where it's actually really hard to win if they take like the first two prizes.
Right.
It also, like in a meta where everyone's going first, it's a good deck to go second with, though you can still go first with the deck and actually still win games. I think Raging Bolt is still going to be very popular. I keep saying that, like, I don't know if it's going to be the most played deck at a regional, but honestly, I think at this point, it's safe to say it's going to be the most played deck, probably for LAIC and for Gdansk. It's just too strong. It's too easy to pick up, but also it's very attractive to play because, yeah, like you all said, it beats Regidrago. Drago just won a giant regional. That's going to influence a lot of people's decisions this weekend, and I'm sure people are going to play Raging Bolt just to beat that. I think that the deck is good, and I do think Slitherwing is very strong in the deck because it actually one-shots Blood Moon Ursa Luna, and it knocks him out with the burn damage, which can get around Pheasantipity, and it also hits for weakness against Terapagos for what it's worth. So it's actually, I think it is better than Sandy Shocks. Even though it hits itself, it's still like a little bit better than Sandy Shocks, in my opinion.
That's fair. And I hate not hitting for weakness with Sandy Shocks. Rahul, do you have any takes on Raging Bolt right now? Do you think that Caleb had a more innovative build, or would you just play a more straightforward build like Sander played?
Just Xander and Caleb's builds were both pretty good. I think Bolt is still super S tier. I think that it is one of the most powerful decks in the format. People still make a lot of mistakes with it, I feel like, because they get caught in the trap of just like, I'm playing all my cards, things should work in a certain way, I'm just going to sequence poorly.
Exactly.
But I do think Bolt is still like one of the best decks in the format, and like it is the scariest deck to sit across from as any deck, because you like no deck that doesn't play like multiple Mimikyu has like an auto win into it. So it's like you sit down and you're like, I could just lose the game right here because this guy's gonna just draw the nuts, which is the scariest part about hitting Bolt.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you could just go fast and get all the pieces that you need, and maybe your deck doesn't punish you for making bad calls. You know, you're not calculating what's inside the deck. You just kind of discard everything and you draw exactly what you said. You draw the nuts, you get everything on board, you get all your energies, and you take that big knockout to start off the game, and now your opponent is shaking in their boots, especially if they're an inexperienced player. They've got to come back from that. So that's kind of where Raging Bolt sits for me, is that it is I usually keep like a box full of like the top 10 decks roughly on me when I'm traveling to events, and that is staying in the box. We'll put it that way. So as far as it goes, Ian, what deck do you think could compete with the mass amounts of Raging Bolts right now? My thoughts are maybe we see a resurgence of Charizard EX come back. Do you agree or disagree here?
I think Charizard is going to definitely be very strong decks. The thing is, like, it's a really weird format where these stage 2 decks are getting oppressed by like the Drago, so it's really tough to say. Like, I think Charizard can make this huge comeback. I think it will definitely get played more though, because your match against Raging Bolt's the only deck where I actually feel super confident into it. Where like if I'm starting a Charmander or a Pidgey or any other one prize, I think it's pretty easy to win. Yeah, Charizard, if you play the matchup correctly and you like sequence everything perfectly. So I think Charizard definitely will do well. I don't know if it's going to be like this crazy comeback, because Drago is heavily overplayed right now, at least in Europe, or at least its results are way better than it should be for the deck. So I think that might pop up a little, but I don't think it's going to do anything too crazy. Maybe like 1 in top 8 or asymmetric cut at most, maybe 2. It's really dependent on matchups. Like if one Charizard player hits all the Raging Bolts, then they can make cut, or Raging Bolt and Trap Ghost to hit those. They can easily make cut, but it's not a deck that I think is going to do anything crazy. I think we're just in a format where all these decks are going to go back and forth, and it's really just what matchups you hit on that day, and do you win the coin flip in the matchup where you need to.
That's fair
for most of these decks.
Yeah, it's definitely, I could see it being a really coin flippy meta, and that's why I brought up Charizard, because Charizard is one of those decks where I feel like you can go first or second and still kind of be okay.
Yeah.
And that's where my head goes when I'm like, okay, Raging Bolt definitely has to go second, or at least wants to go second most of the time. You don't have to go second. I'm just making the assumption here, but they definitely choose a blind second. We'll put it that way. But Charizard is one of those decks where you can go either way. Now there is a little bit unknown YouTuber, content creator, Twitch streamer. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, Azul GG. He put out a list about Charizard he thought would be much better than the current list. Rahul, have you seen this list without Dusknoir in it?
I have.
What are your thoughts?
I mean, Azul basically is like saying that I can't beat, like, so a lot of the Zard lists, I think the problem with them is they're trying to beat everything.
Yes.
But when you're trying to put, like, I don't know, man, if you're not Tord, you're not playing like 31 ofs and making it work. So like at some point you gotta like concede some matchups and just like make your Zard list super consistent, and that's what Azul chose to do.
Yeah.
Like he chose to take better matchups into like Bolt and Lugia and stuff like that, but he chose to take really, really bad matchups into like Block, for example, or any sort of control or stall matchup, which I mean the trade-off is there, and it's like your choice on what you want to do. I think a lot of Zard players will like stick to their text, because I feel like with stage 2 decks like Zard, it's been in the format for almost a year now, or over a year now even, and so people are like very married to their ideas of like how they should play the deck. And I think that's just something that people are really like hard to budge on with stuff like Zard specifically, just because they're like, well, my 59 card list of like these techs specifically did really well at my League Cup. Why would I change it for this regional?
Right. No, I can definitely see that. And then getting into Charizard lists, another list that I feel like kind of is awkward, I would say, is the newer Banette and Gardevoir deck. So we're going to stick on you for a little bit here. Sure. With the resurgence, especially in European regionals, we've seen a lot of Banette coming out of the woodwork, and now online tournaments. We saw Piper piloting it at Louisville. Are you seeing any success in personal testing? Do you think that the deck is worth putting some time and effort to in these last remaining majors in this format?
Sure. Yeah, I think so. I think, well, key point number one, because of Europe, it's the same Polish guy, Mateusz, who's been playing it at pretty much every event. Yeah. And I think he's got a group of friends also that all play it. Yeah. And we are going to Poland, so I would expect a good group of them to pull up that will play it. Like, I think I talked to him at one of the last European years of Dortmund, and he had like a group of 4 friends that played it, and like 2 of them day 2'd. So like I think that trend may continue. The deck is very inherently strong, just because you can turn 2 item lock into like, if you can buy yourself the first 2 prizes in every matchup,
Yeah.
Gardevoir plus Monkey Dory damage is pretty much enough to like take care of any matchup in general, because Monkey Dory is just so broken as a card. You just have to be able to last that long in certain matchups. Like in theory, Bolt is a really favored matchup for the deck, but you can still get run over by Bolt, which is like kind of scary.
Yeah, exactly.
I think the deck is good. I think going into Lille, none of my group went, but I did say like we should try to put some time into this. And I think everyone's pretty much like locked into their decks for the last 2 tournaments of the format. But I think if you aren't decided on a deck and want to put some more time into something, Banette could be a good deck because you have pretty few bad matchups. Like I think, but like even Zard, if you get the shop at flip off, like you just can win the game because Zards are cutting Charmeleon, or even just playing 1 Charmeleon isn't enough. With Tomb, you shut down the Rotoms and stuff too, so they can't even draw.
Yeah.
So it's like you have a pretty good matchup in everything, probably besides Lugia, which I think is just your worst matchup.
Absolutely. So going to you, LDF, what are you thinking for people? I've seen people play this at League Cups and Challenges now, sleeving it up and just taking it to locals. Are you thinking that this is going to be one of those top 10 decks in the format right now while we close things out?
Yeah, this is interesting. Ever since the deck has been getting more popular in like online tournaments and stuff, I have noticed a lot more people in my area playing the deck. So the deck is getting a lot more popular. Me and my group of friends have been like talking about the deck and like trying to test against it, because it is actually a legit deck. It's not just a pile. It is legit kind of scary to play against. It's like Lock is really hard to play against sometimes, depending on your deck, and it does prey on how decks are being built right now. And it is one of those decks that like, if you don't know how like what you're doing against it, it can win, because like it's a hard deck to play against. It's a very new deck. You know, some people might not know what they're doing when they're playing against it. But at that time too, it's also very hard to play. I find that deck does have a lot of decisions behind it. So I can also see somebody who wants to play the deck, you know, probably needs to pick it up and practice with it before, because it is a bit of a difficult deck to pilot. It's not just like Charizard or Regidrago or Raging Bull where you can pick it up and probably do good with it because those cards are so good. This deck does require a lot of skill. I don't know if it'll be like super popular. Like it probably won't be. I think it might be more popular than like regular Gardevoir at like a regional, but I don't know if it's like something that you have to be like, I need to beat this deck if I'm going into this tournament. It's still kind of like Snorlax in a way where it's like just like it's one of those control stally type decks. But I don't know. I do think the deck is pretty good. It is very scary, but yeah, like Rahul said, it's got a really bad Lugia matchup. Lugia is really good right now. Potentially best deck in the format.
Right.
Which is bad. And like Raging Bull can still beat you. It's not a perfect deck, but I think it's still decent.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people take Lugia and just make a wild run. You know, we know how that goes. I think Lugia has still been seeing an uptick in more online events as well, from what I can tell. And now we're going to see if that translates over in Poland. So, Rahul, you're probably the best one on the panel today here to talk about it. Are we changing anything for the format with Lugia? Because I've seen some people start to put a little bit more idea, you know, work into things like the Wellspring Ogerpon into the list. I've even seen Fluttermane make its way back in there, or a Klefki, something like that to combat maybe Thorns or something like that. Or we're just sticking to the same old 60.
I think it's kind of crazy to think that there are, I think, 5 Lugia players off the top of my head that have had proven success in this format.
Yeah.
Myself, Kieran, Zapdos TCG, Ethan, and there was one other. I'm forgetting.
Yurko?
Yurko, yep, that's the last one. And all 5 of us have played very different builds. Like, sure, it's like our 55 cards are the same, but the last 5 slots are different. But those last 5 slots are very indicative to how we want to play the game. Like, I have Raikou. Yurko has Arven. Ethan's playing a 1/2 Rat and Thornton. Stuff like that. Like, everyone has their own unique way. I think it really does not matter what 60 cards you play for Lugia, as long as you have all your options. It's just how you use them more than anything. Sure, in some matchups you're a little bit more disadvantaged because you don't have 2/2 Rat, for example. Or like maybe I win more games against Pidgeot based decks because I have Raikou versus I don't kind of thing. But it's like a small enough percentage where I think Lugia is just so inherent. Like, there's only like, I think Lugia is legitimately the only deck where I feel like if you win the flip and have a reasonable setup turn 2, you cannot lose a majority of games.
Right.
Like, I don't think I can say the same about any other deck in this format. Where like if you just get the Lugia up and running and you pop off, it's like very difficult to lose those games.
Right.
And then in the like scope of the meta, I think it just kind of comes down to like what 60 cards you want to play as techs. Like I feel like people are married to their techs. Like I think I've seen every Lugia player up till now tweet like this is the optimal 60. Like I think Kieran's tweeted, I think Ethan's tweeted it. I haven't said it's optimal yet. I was tooting the Raiku's horn for a little bit, but I definitely could be convinced into other options as well. But I think Lugia is like, it has consistently been one of the most powerful options in this format.
Right.
Yet people choose not to play it because I think they don't understand how to use all their attackers and energies efficiently. And I think that each matchup requires a little bit of nuance, not a lot, but just enough nuance where it's like, it's slightly harder than Bolt kind of thing.
Right.
And that like 5% of like difficulty and learning is something people don't want to do. So they just default to Bolt. Exactly. They default to the deck they've been playing. But I do think it's like, I don't know. I don't expect Europe to put in a ton more techs. They don't usually do. Like, I mean, Europe is a region that let Mew win for like 10 events straight or whatever.
Yeah.
So I don't think that I don't expect that Lugia will have a bad showing. Hopefully I do well. So it's like hopefully I have a good showing. And
that's what we're hoping for. So I mean, I do agree with you on a lot of those points. I think that if you know you're 60, you're just going to play your 60 and do your thing. I'm just making sure Ian's okay here. So as far as as getting the knowledge of your own deck versus everything else, I think that that's more powerful than really anything there is out there in the format right now. If you know your 60 inside and out, you know how many energy cards you have, you know what attackers that you need to set up for what matchups, you're going to be able to play the deck. There is the rumor of being inconsistent, which we obviously see is not the case.
I think it's like, I think if you put like Lugia with all the other decks, I think maybe you're like a few percentage less consistent, but after my group introduces Squawk ability into the format, I think it's like, I don't know, you're right up there with everybody else. Like I think the Squawk makes it so you get to play more games, and every game Lugia gets to play, you have a pretty good shot at winning. Like Drago is pretty inconsistent. I think Bolt is pretty inconsistent at doing exactly what it's like. Sure, it gets a turn to attack off, but can it be consistent after that point?
Right.
Like every deck has their weaknesses. It's just that with Lugia, sometimes you'll see a hand and you're like, well, that's it. Let's go to the next one. But with another deck, you could miss a turn one attack, and realistically, the game could be over right there. It's just you don't realize it and play it out because it's technically not over. But with Lugia, it's just like, all right, pack it up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. As far as the the consistency goes, obviously, we have Ian with us. I can hear you, Ian. If you're in the room with us, let us know.
I am here. I am here. My camera decided not to work.
It's totally fine. It's totally fine. Ian, we'll just use your voice. So guide me through the one big matchup I foresee some differences in the list, and it still loses to Lugia in my testing, has been block Snorlax. As you can see behind me, I have Snorlax. We've seen it without the Rotom in there to give it a 2 prize liability. I've tried so hard. I've beaten Lugia in the EUIC meta. I was able to beat it. You throw some Temple of Sinnohs in there, you throw some hammers, and it's a great day. But the deck just doesn't do that anymore. You have to play it a little bit differently. You have to get the deck to work. It beats pretty much everything else in the meta. So I think that it has a really great meta share. But when you come up to a Lugia, which is one of the best decks in the format right now, I feel like you just plain out lose with Blocklax. Have you tried the Rotomless Blocklax? Do you think we're going to start to see that in Poland a little bit more?
So I actually have an opinion on this deck. So first of all, I thought Sanders' list was really cool.
Yeah.
Second of all, though, I really don't like his list. Some supporters, I would consider questionable that he decided to play it in his deck. I don't know if Choi is a competitively viable Pokemon card, but he played it. I do think the deck's actually in a really good spot right now. Like in a format, let's say it's like 12% Lugia, and I think it's even like. So that's more Lugia I'm expecting for an event in this format. Right. But like if a deck like you're beating everything except for the 12% of Lugia, like I think it's a great play. Like if I was going to a regionals weekend or a League Cup, I'd probably be playing Snorlax or Raging Bolt. I think every other deck is one I would not touch, but Snorlax just take your loss against a Lugia and crush the rest of your decks. I think it's a totally reasonable way to have success at tournaments.
Yeah.
Sometimes you'll have a bad time just because that's how math works. Sometimes you get unlucky, hit like only bad matchups. You know, it's part of the game.
Right.
A lot of time though, you'll crush like every single deck you face because no one's really prepared for you not having access to Rotom. Because Snorlax, I think the reason why it was struggling earlier in this format is you can't really bench Rotom right now.
Yeah.
Rotom is such a major liability against every single deck right now that you just can't bench it. This either it's a way to get out of Snorlax or just those two prizes. Because a lot of times Snorlax now will be able to like lock your opponent. They can get like squeeze out the last like 1-2 prizes. So it's not having Rotom in play solves that issue. So I think that playing box orders just makes the deck great. And I honestly something I really recommend right now.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that Snorlax has just been innovated over and over again. I saw that there was a Pokestop build at one point. I think that people like Sander have so much of a hold on what control can do in a meta and what the best control deck will be. I personally played it to a league challenge, and I took not necessarily Xander's build, but All Out Blitzel had also posted a very similar list, and I took that, modified it. I talk to Blitzel quite often about the poor deck choices that we make together, but as far as it goes, you know, I innovated the list a little bit, and I just ran through a league challenge. Now, looking at something like Secret Box as the ace spec here instead of just having the Hero's Cape. Rahul, have you looked at either one of these lists or tested them out in your personal testing?
Not really. I don't know. They're unique in their own way, but I feel like there's only so much innovation. Like once the surprise is out for a lot of these decks, it just feels like I don't know. Like the cat's now out of the bag. People are going to be more prepared for it, and so I think whenever you can do something like this for the first tournament of that format, you can usually innovate and get that next leg. But I think information just moves so quickly these days that now in the last like 2 weeks since Lille, you've probably had countless videos, countless podcasts, countless people talking about it, and I'm sure our good friend Azul has probably talked about it to death on his stream as well.
That's right. And now a deck that I'd be scared of other than Lugia if I was playing Snorlax, we see Cloth making its way into the format, but I actually think that it's a legitimate deck. You know, if I sat across from a Cloth with 6 switch outs, try to say that 5 times fast, then I would be scared as a Snorlax player. I don't know if I'd be really scared as a Lugia player, but do you think Cloth can actually start to show up in higher numbers? Can we see it get to that 10%, Rahul?
Never 10%, I don't think, but I think it could. Like, I don't. So it did have like what? It almost top 8'd Baltimore. It lost the win and in. It top 4'd Brazil. I don't know. Some other. It's been doing okay. I just think people need to like believe. Like with a deck like this, people got to believe in droves. If that doesn't happen, they're not going to do it. But I don't hate the deck. I played against it, and I actually almost lost in Baltimore. So like I actually and I think the matchup was super favored for me anyway.
Right.
And like I acknowledge that it's super powerful because it's one of the few decks like Bolt that can go second and just absolutely blow up the board taking the first 2. And then your opponent's like stuck taking a 1 prizer, and that feels pretty bad for them. However, Cloth's biggest issue again is that like you need to draw the right cards in the right order, and you pretty much only have like a few attacks. So if your opponent can withstand your few attacks, the game probably is just over.
Exactly. Yeah. So coming from the Rogue Master here, LDF, what are your thoughts on Cloth right now? Are you going to change up any of the list? Do you think that maybe we need to put more baby Petronts in this thing? Do you think that it is a legitimately viable meta deck going forward?
I don't know. I don't buy the hype on the deck. I think it's a cute deck. It's cool with what it does, but like I don't see how it beats like the stuff like Lugia, Charizard, Drago. Yeah, like I mean, I guess you're beating Snorlax. You're probably beating Raging Bolt, maybe. Yeah, I don't know. It's a cool deck, but I don't know. There's just better like 1 prize decks out there. If I were to play like a deck like Cloth or like Lost Box, like a deck that can use 1 prize attackers very well, I would probably just pick Lost Box. Even if I take an auto loss to Drago, Cloth is just a very gimmicky deck. It's also very easy to exploit the deck's weakness, which is take out the Brew Bonnets as fast as possible.
Yep.
And once you take out all the Brew Bonnets, they have literally like no way to do anything for the entire game pretty much. Like every time I play against the Cloth deck, I just like ignore the cloth, and I just go like boss, vacuum, jamming tower, whatever, stop the Brew Bonnet, and like usually they just run out of gas really quickly.
Right.
I don't know. It's a cool idea. It's a cool deck, but I don't know. Even with like the popularity of like that Bayonet deck getting popular now, that's another deck that I'm probably not very happy to see of if I'm playing cloth. So I don't know, man. It's a cute deck, but I don't think it's gonna be like popular. Like maybe one or two will make a day two at a regional, but yeah, I don't know. It's probably never gonna be anything more than just like a meme.
Now, a deck that we've seen obviously has been growing in popularity through this whole format here, that we haven't seen take down an entire event yet is Palkia Dusknoir. So I'm thinking that we might see a resurgence a little bit more in Poland because Palkia Dusknoir is a very powerful deck, can utilize Dusknoir very well, and has so much comeback potential in a format that is very comeback reliant. So LDF, are you still a believer in Palkia Dusknoir, or do you think that we're going to see it fall off for this weekend?
I don't know if it'll fall off. It's just a very strong deck. It's probably the most aggressive like go first deck right now in the format because it can absolutely like destroy your opponent's board.
Right.
It's a cool deck. It's strong. I think it'll still be very popular. I think we've all figured out like the optimal 59-60 for the deck. Like Stefan, I think, kind of introduced that. This is the best way to play the deck. This is the best 60 cards. I'll give or take like maybe play like 2 Froakies or whatever, but I think it's still very strong. I think it's still going to be pretty popular. I think it's still going to have good results.
Gotcha.
It doesn't really gain any bad matchups, I don't think, with like any of these new decks popping up. Just being able to blow your opponent's board up and just having the ability to just be so aggressive so fast, like it's really good. But it is one of those decks where it's like if you go second, you're at a bit more of a disadvantage because the deck going first is just insane. I think Palkia is still really good.
Yeah. Ian, I know you've got some opinions on Palkia Dusknoir, so give it to me.
Okay, first of all, Irida is an unplayable Pokemon card. In the game where basically, like, we're not just playing with these, like, small combo engines with things like Inteleon. Like, a deck like Palkia Dusknoir, Irida is usually the better card on turn 2, is what I've noticed. Or, sorry, I apologize, turn 1, and then sometimes it's like, usually turn 2 always, turn 1 sometimes, depending on how good your hand is. The issue of Irida is that, off of Iono, if your opponent ever Ionos you, is one of the worst cards in your deck. Only getting an item... It's like 1.5 cards, I would call it. Because Water Pokemon's not even a full card most of the time. So basically, we either have access to, we get 1.5 cards or 7.
Yeah.
Really is how I look at it. And it's a deck where you don't need all your resources. So I think research is very important. And Klefki, in my opinion, is one of the best cards in format. And one thing I really notice about Palkia and testing and just how the game works right now is one of the best decks at using Klefki. So I think that's one of the biggest reasons to play the deck. I will say one thing, I don't like the deck as much right now as I did at Louisville where I played it because then Regidrago, I believe, was 6% for that event, but now Regidrago is going back up. So I wouldn't recommend it as much, but I think the deck's really good, and I think that if you play Research and Klefki, you'll see the deck just functions a lot better.
Yeah, I like Klefki in a lot of lists. I think Klefki is really good in the format that we're in right now. I think that utilizing it in a deck like Palkia, when I saw you come out with that build for Louisville, I was just in awe. I'm like, oh my god, I did not even think of putting Klefki in this deck list. How did I not think of that?
Me either. I was saved by a friend. He's trying to shove Klefki in every deck. He's like, oh, you should try
exactly.
Klefki.
Yeah,
so, shout out Luke.
It was that or double Froakie, either one going in there. Rahul, I wanted to ask you, do you think that over past results, Palkia is the better Dusknoir deck, or do we think Terapagos is the better Dusknoir deck, especially for this weekend?
Probably Palkia, just because both the decks have similar bad matchups. But Terapagos can use Briar better, but I think both like really struggle to deal with Drago. I think Terapagos really struggles to deal with Zard. I don't know. Nico got very close to making top 8 in Lille, so I will say that maybe like one could sneak in. I mean, a series of unfortunate events and some pretty bad play on his part led to him not making top cut over there, and then Tord hitting the Dragapult immediately in Dortmund were the two examples. So I think a good player piloting either could do very well, because Stefan also I think was very close once again to making top cut. With I think like a 1-card change or a 2-card change or something. So I think either of those decks, it's got to be like a good player knowing what they're doing, because there's so many lines. Like there's just so many lines that you got to think like the game is not that long for both those decks. They're like 3-turn games, so like you got to like know what you're doing the whole time. But I think to answer the question, Palkia I think is a better version.
Perfect. Okay, now there has been some resurgence of Terapagos, but not the Dusknoir version. I've seen a couple of different builds with control Terapagos, where you're obviously getting hit, you're putting your Boufflant down, your Bravery Charm, and then picking up the Terapagos, putting it back down. There's been Airy put in these decks. There's been all kinds of crazy things that I've seen. Do we think that maybe this is the major event, Rahul, that we're going to see something like that come out of the woodwork?
Sure. I'm sure it's like some control player out there has like cooked something up with it, but otherwise I don't see the merit. I think like the Dusknoir version just is so much better at exploding the game versus if you go the basic version, you're still reliant on Noctowl. Yeah. You are a little bit weaker to stuff like Bolt, where you're just going to get blown up anyway on turn 2 now.
Yeah.
Like I think overall your early game is so much weaker, and this meta does not feel like good if your early game is not good.
Right. Absolutely. So talking about the metagame, that's what we're all here for. That's what you're watching this video for. So LDF, let's start it off with you. What are your top 3 picks if you were to play a major this weekend, talking about going to Gdansk? What would you be bringing as your top 3 decks and why?
Okay, so at number 3, I have Lost Box. I don't think the deck actually is in a great spot right now because Drago is really popular. I just really enjoy playing Lost Box. I think that I think you actually beat everything but Drago and Bayonet, I guess. I don't know. I like Lost Box a lot. I don't think it's going to do as good as it did at Louisville. Like I said, Drago is way too popular. That matchup is an insta-loss, but I would consider it just because I like Lost Box. It's just, if you don't hit Drago, you can go far in a tournament with it. There's a bunch of different ways you can play it. I've seen it with just like the Hands and Moon, and then there's Zapdos. There's also Raikou. There's Roaring Moon, which I want to leak up with. So I'm a big fan of Lost Box. I don't think I'd recommend the deck if you're actually trying to win the tournament, but I don't know. If you want to just have fun, play a deck, make day 2, Lost Box, pretty cool. I would consider playing Charizard. Charizard, I think, actually is also decent right now. It's just one of those decks that it beats up on Raging Bolt, and if you want a deck that just like beats Raging Bolt pretty easily, Charizard is definitely the best pick. I know it might struggle into like Snorlax, but I don't know. I think Charizard is pretty solid. Like, I would consider that for Gdansk. And then finally, I would probably consider playing like Lugia, just because I think Lugia, besides Raging Bolt, is the best deck right now. Like Rahul said, as long as the deck sets up, you probably just don't lose any matches as long as you know what you're doing. Yeah. And yeah, I think Lugia also has a pretty solid matchup in Regidrago. Drago lists usually are playing like 1 Temple, 1 Jamming. Bit more easier to deal with. Yeah, I'd probably consider those 3 personally, just if I was going to the tournament.
Gotcha. Now, I'm not going to ask you the same question, Rahul, because I know you're just going to say Lugia 3 times. But if you were to you were to guess the top 5 decks that are going to show up at Gdansk this weekend, what would the top 5 on the graphic be?
Bolt, number 1. I'm going to say Drago number 2, because I feel like Europe did like Drago last time we were there. And after it popped off again, I think it'll give people the confidence to go back to it. I'll say Zard number 3. Europe always, for some reason, has a pretty big Zard play percentage. I'll say Lugia number 4, because I think it's just picking up in popularity. People are finally realizing it's good, but I don't think people realize it's a like top 3 deck. People just still want to play their own poison still. And then number 5, I'll probably say I'll say Palkia. Just because I think it's a pretty good deck still, and I think there's like that. Like I think Stefan can convince like a good group of Europeans to play it, and I think that's like more than enough.
Solid. All right, so we're filming this pre-Halloween, but it's probably going to release on Halloween. So, Ian, I'm going to have you dress up as a hater for this one. What are the top 3 decks that you would recommend somebody not to play for this weekend?
Not to play? Ooh, that's a good one. So I think I'm actually going to go. Number 1 is definitely Trapghost. I'll get that out of the way. I do not like Trapghost right now. I think it's just a worse version of Palkia in every way, really. Yeah. I think Greninja EX is a card that does a lot better than Briar, so I think that I would just play Palkia instead. So that's number 1.
Yeah.
Number 2, I'll say Regidrago. I think the deck's a trap right now. I think that, like I said earlier, its result at Lille did not show its position in the metagame. So I'll say that's number 2. And then number 3, I don't know. Don't play Miraidon. Just play Raging Bolt.
Very fair.
I just don't play. Like, Miraidon doesn't really do anything better than Raging Bolt does. I think that's one.
Wait till next format. We get Magneton.
Pikachu EX is
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, very cool. So we're gonna go around the bend here because it is spooky season. I'm going to ask you some personal questions. I like to bring the human element onto these metaphorcasts too. So, Ian, we'll start with you. I want you to tell me your favorite childhood Halloween costume.
Halloween costume. I think I did Harry Potter.
Okay.
I think that was my favorite. In 2010,
Solid,
I remember I was gonna go trick or treating. The last minute, I created my Harry Potter costume. So I think that one's
perfect.
cool.
Perfect. Rahul, any childhood Halloween costumes you want to pick out as your favorite?
I think I went as the Blue Ranger like 3 years in a row.
Okay.
I want to say that was like a pretty core memory.
Solid.
I think the last time I trick or treated was when I was pretty young, though. I didn't like go past like middle school, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think like the Blue Ranger was a fan favorite. I think that like lasted for a couple of years.
Solid. LDF, any favorites of your Halloween costumes of the past?
Spider-Man. Big Spider-Man fan. I've been Spider-Man quite a few times for Halloween. I've been Ghostface quite a few times too. I remember there's like old Ghostface outfits where you could. There's like this thing you would squeeze and it would like put like red blood.
Oh, I
in the
remember
mask.
those. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've been that a few times too.
That's the spirit of Halloween classic.
That's a classic.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So now to round things out, the thing that I love most about these metaphorcasts, we're going to talk about our favorite rogue deck in the format. Mine personally right now, I've been playing some Greninja EX control. I know a little while back we saw that kind of do well in an online tournament. It won a late night, which is kind of wild. It's got Wellspring in there. It's got double Greninja EX, and it's got Farigiraf EX in there too. A lot of kind of fun different things. I'd love to see that do well at a major event. Maybe somebody will bring it, maybe not. But LDF, what would be your favorite rogue deck for this format right now?
Yeah, like I said, Lost Box. I just like playing the deck. There's just so many fun things you can do with it. I also think the deck, like literally apart from a bad Regidrago matchup, it's fine into like everything else. Like I guess Lugia is a little tough if they set up, but I don't know. Lost Box probably my favorite rogue deck. I don't even know if you consider a rogue deck because it did get second at Louisville. But I mean, in a meta where you have like an insta loss against one of the best decks, it's probably a rogue deck.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd probably just go Lost Box. I just like playing it. I love just trying to make weird Lost Zone piles work. It's a fun deck.
Cool.
I'm gonna play until it rotates.
Got it. Rahul, any rogue decks on your mind that you'd love to see do well at a tournament?
Gouging Fire.
Fire, let's go.
I've actually been like pretty intrigued by it myself. I've played against it, lost to it at regionals.
Oh wow!
I think it's pretty powerful. It's like Bolt, but you have to keep all your energy.
Yep.
Obviously, no unlimited damage cap, so the bigger decks are a little bit of a problem. Like Zard is like obviously probably an auto loss or like close to one for the deck.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I think the deck is pretty cool. I think it's unique, but follows the same pattern of aggressive Sada based engine. You just get to use Monkey Dory as well with the Magma Basin, which is like a cool little thing you can do, which I like.
Nice, very cool. Ian, any rogue decks on your mind here?
I think Turtle Control is pretty cool. It's like kind of rogue. I like what Dylan Gunn played at Louisville, where basically you just play double Bouffalon in Pidgeot, and you basically just have this huge high HP turtle that most decks can't really handle, and it kind of sits there and you just go penny every turn.
Exactly. Yeah.
Also, Ursaluna works, but Turtle Control.
I love it. I played that at some locals, so it's definitely a very fun deck. It's a deck that maybe I'd put more time in for locals. Like if I'm fully capped, I'm getting close to being capped at cups and challenges now. So once I cap out, I'll play fun decks like that for sure. Maybe not at a major event, but super cool. Anyway, Ian, I know that you're not necessarily with us on the recording. We'll have your picture up here, but any shout outs and places people can find you online?
Yeah, of course, shout out the Shuffle Squad, shout out PJ had me on. Find me online at Ian__Rob on X, and
cool.
Hopefully I'll have a camera next time more than just half the.
We'll get you one. We'll send you out one stat overnight. Rahul, any shout outs that you want to give here where the people can find you?
Thanks for having me on again. I think big one is just my YouTube. My name Rahul Reddy, pretty easy to find. And then my Twitter is just the Flea with 4 E's after it. I think if you type in Rahul Reddy, it should also come up. But those are the main 2 places. That's all you really need to know about me.
Make sure you subscribe to Rahul. He's close to 10K.
That's right.
I'm very close. Yeah.
Make sure you get him to 10K. Let's work together as a community here and get this man the next step up. LDF, where can the people find you, and what shout outs did you want to give today?
Yeah, you can find me on X, Twitter, and YouTube. X and YouTube and Twitch. Sorry, at Little Dark Fury. You can check out my second channel, LDF Pokemon TCG, for extra content. Might be making a third channel very soon too, so keep your eye out for that. And then big shout out to the Shuffle Squad and the sponsors, TC Evolutions and Card Cabin.
Absolutely. So we're going to leave you with the rest of our sponsors. If you want to get anything at a discounted rate, make sure you're checking out all of the links below in the description of this video. And then you will also be able to see all the other places where you can find the Shuffle Squad. We've got our website. We've got our Metafied groups going. So make sure you're checking those out too. And subscribe to the channel. If you're not subscribed already, make sure you're leaving a like on the video if you'd like to see more meta forecasts like this, and let us know what you want to see next time. We're going to be doing a lot more meta forecasts. We've got a ton of tournaments coming up in this season. We are definitely nowhere close to being done here, so make sure you're hanging out with us here on the Shuffle Squad. I'm PJ, but we'll all catch you next time here on the Shuffle Squad.
You made it to the end. Thank you so much for watching this entire video from the Shuffle Squad. Honestly, from the bottom of our hearts, we appreciate each and every person that supports our content, watches what we have going on every single day, every single week, even from time to time, and continuously allows us to have a forum to project our creative content towards the Pokemon TCG community. So if you haven't already, be sure to give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and even leave a comment to help boost the YouTube algorithm. That being said, we'll catch you with our next video. Thanks again. Take it easy.